Okay, here I am. Day 51. Oh, it's a beauty today. Before I put my glove on, let me show you what we got. Beautiful colors. It's cold. I could tell it was going to be beautiful just by the colors that were coming around the house about 30 minutes ago. I could start to see a little pink on the horizon in the atmosphere. The ducks, but the lake is cold, but it's not frozen, so the ducks are floating happily. Anyway, all right, we're going to be flying through 1 Samuel and trying to get, and people know, one of the stories I read this morning was David and Goliath, and the whole story about David, which we've all heard about. But before that happened, the people request a king, Israel, against their better judgment, and Samuel warns them, this is what a king's going to do. Are you sure you want it? And they're like, yes, we're sure. You know, he's going to tax you. He's going to take part of everything you own, your sons, your daughters, your crops, your animals. You know, are you sure? You sure you want this? Yep. Okay. So I titled this one, I'm trying to put everything in like practical terms that you and I can understand in 2022 or whenever you're watching this. And there was a story in chapter 14 after Saul has been anointed king, and they are in one of their battles against the Philistines, still battling the Philistines. And Saul makes an oath. That's not so wise. That's very smart. He didn't think before he spoke. So that was the title of today. Thinking before you speak. And especially when we have, awareness of us as humans. Samuel warned them, even Saul seemed to know that he cared a lot about what other people thought of him. As we'll see as we unfold this little story that's in chapter 14 that precedes, David coming on the scene. But it's that foreshadowing of Saul kind of believing in himself, in and of himself, apart from God, and his own power and authority, and what he says goes. So he makes an oath. They're in the battle. They're weary. The men have had it. Like, they're exhausted. And because he didn't think before he spoke, it was like, he probably just said, oh, this sounds good. Yes, I'll do that. He didn't think things through. So yesterday it was the problem of overthinking. Today we have the problem of underthinking and not thinking enough before you blurt something out. And especially if you are the type of person that's like, well, once I've said it, I got to do it. I can't go back on my word, my oath. If you've got that type of mentality and you can't admit when you're wrong, you especially need to think before you speak. So he makes an oath and says, okay, we're going to have victory today and none of you can eat. You can't eat anything, nothing, all day until we have victory. And I guess probably in his warped human thinking and his misunderstanding of how God works, that God will provide the strength that we need today to overcome. And this will be proof because we fasted while we were in battle. I can just imagine, because I'm human. I have crazy thoughts like this. And this really convicts me as a parent. How many times in passion and in the heat of battle have you made a proclamation about your to your kids? Good morning. How are you? Have you made a proclamation to your kids and said, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, uh-oh, I'm going to have to follow through on that. But do you really? Like, if you didn't think and you said something crazy in the heat of the moment, but how many parents do that? So anyway, and literally in this story, we see Saul's words as a parent come back to bite him. So Jonathan didn't hear this proclamation. And it wasn't just a proclamation. He even said, and a curse will fall on whoever disobeys this order. Well, Jonathan didn't hear this. That's Saul's son. He's the leader of another small little battalion already out. He didn't hear this. And so he ate. He ate some honey. They specifically talk about honey. Felt refreshed. And then later, when Saul is... Oh, and they do have a victory. And they take some plunder, like animals, and they're like they're hungry out of their minds. They are so hungry that they, in their victory, since now they have permission to eat, they take the animals and they start, eating them, chopping them up and eating them. And then, so here's the hypocrisy and where we get in trouble. We see, like, our thinking isn't working. Saul says, stop. You're eating the meat that still has the lifeblood in it. We can't do this. This is against God. So he gets very concerned about the rules at that point and pleasing God and doing the right things in the eyes of other men. Like, oh God, I'm going to get in trouble here. So it really wasn't from a heart place. It was more of a rule following image place. Like, I better make sure everybody knows that I'm king and I'm following the rules. And so again, not caring about the state of his men and their physicality and eating, and that he's even caused this bit of maybe insanity by depriving them of food all day. And they're so hungry that they just need to eat and not follow, and they're not worried about the rules. But then that's where he gets caught up in the rules. You see what I was like the hypocrisy there a little bit, or the double standards maybe. And then after they eat, they rectify the situation, drain the lifeblood, they're eating in a proper way and sacrificing and following the rules. He goes and prays to God, but then God doesn't answer him. So he's like, uh-oh, somebody must have, eaten something before they were supposed to. And so now we're all cursed. And instead of really thinking, well, maybe God's not answering you because you didn't consult him before making a silly oath, and now you want to literally die on this hill. And so he goes down this rabbit trail of casting lots, and eventually, and he even says, and I will kill whoever did this, even if it's my son. Well, of course, we find out that it's his son. And he's really going to follow through on it. He's like, well, I said it, so now I've got to do it. Sorry, son, you got to die. And luckily the people are like, wait a minute. We had victory because he was actually smart enough to eat and he had energy. He's the reason we're here and we've actually had victory because he saved us. And, what are you doing here, dude? And so then he kind of says, oh, well, if y'all are okay with me sparing his life, I guess I can do it, But he was really ready to die on that hill if the people hadn't said, hey, wait a minute, this is crazy. And the title of this little story was The Foolish Oath of Saul. So, but how many times have we done that? Like, I can think of so many times as a parent, or my husband too, like going, what in the world? Hey, yes, we love Jesus. Yes, Vicky, you are up early, girl. Girl, where are you? That you're up. I know you're on the West Coast. But thank you for being here this early and rising and shining with us on the East Coast. Man, so Have you done that? Do you think, number one, like the lesson is think and pray before you speak, but at least think rationally. Like, am I really willing to follow through on this proclamation? There's the beautiful sun. And, hey, lady, yes, we love Sundays. Sundays. Man, and then you're like, well, I said it, or I spent the money, or I did the thing, so now I got to follow, like in business, we call this sunk cost or lost opportunity, or throwing good money after bad. Like he just kept going headstrong, like, well, I said it, so I got to, even if it's foolish, and then didn't even have the self-awareness with the whole situation with eating the animals, and his then wanting to apply the right, quote unquote, right standards there and God's standards there. But it was really from a self-image point of view. Y'all, like, is this convicting to you all too? Like, oh my, what are they going to think of me if I don't follow through on my word? And then what are they going to think of me if I don't, just do what it looks like we're supposed to do, even if his heart wasn't in the right place? Oh man. So this is just a little foreshadowing of the trouble that Saul is in as a person, and why then we need David, a man after God's own heart, because in order to see what that looks like, we've got to be provided the contrast to that. And we are all a lot more like Saul than we'd probably care to admit. But if we could have the wisdom to admit it and even think, or if we haven't thought, then at least double back and admit that we're wrong and care more about what God thinks, then we actually become more like David. But in our own humanness, we totally can't see the forest for the trees. And then we get concerned, well, my kids won't respect me or so-and-so won't respect me if I admit that I'm wrong. Like, we live from a fear of human judgment versus God's judgment. And even having to live with that divided heart, or that knowing even within yourself, even though Saul might have known better, and he was probably relieved when the people were like, don't kill your son, but he was more concerned about his image than doing the right thing, or even thinking sensibly, or admitting he was wrong. Whew. I mean, that little story is what caught my attention today. And even though we all like the whole story of David and Goliath and all the epic adventures that are in 1 Samuel, maybe we'll touch on tomorrow. But anyway, I really appreciate you all tuning in and watching this wherever you are, and kind of learning and watching me be uncomfortably convicted as I'm reading the Bible for the first time and doing these little sunrise verbal processing of that, I guess. Anyway, have a great Sunday, whatever you've got on your agenda, and I'll see you bright and early tomorrow, Monday. Make it a great day.